The House will come to order. This morning, the pledge will be said by Piper Counts and Taya Counts from Rockridge Elementary in Castle Rock, Colorado, guests of Representative Alex Valdez.
Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and
Justice for all. Mr. Randall, please call the roll.
Representatives Arndt. Representative Arndt.
Excused.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Baisley. Representative Arndt is present. Beckman. Benavides. Benavides.
Excused.
Byrd. Bockenfeld. Buck. Buckner. Quinteo. Caravale. Carver. Catlin. Coleman. Cutter. Duran. Escar. Exum. Froelich. Galindo. Representative Galindo. Garnett. Geithner. Gonzalez Gutierrez. Gray. Hanson. Herod. Putin. Putin.
Excused.
Humphrey. Jackson. Jaquez Lewis. Kennedy. Kipp. Kraft-Tharp. Kraft-Tharp. Landgraf. Landgraf. Representative Benavidez is present.
Excused.
Larson. Lewis. Lewis.
Driving slow. She's kind of slow.
Excused.
Liston. Lontine. McCluskey. McKean. McLaughlin. McLaughlin.
Who is it? Excused.
Melton. Michelson Janae. Mollica. Neville. Pelton. Ransom. Rich. Roberts. Representative McLaughlin is present. Sane. Sandridge. Singer. Sirota. Snyder. Soper. Sullivan. Tipper. Tatone. Valdez A. A. Valdez. Valdez D.
Morning, Randall.
Van Winkle. Weissman. Will. Williams. Wilson. Madam Speaker.
Let's see, with 59 present, 6 excused, we have a quorum. Representative Gonzalez Gutierrez.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It is an honor to serve with you.
It is an honor to serve with you, Representative.
Madam Speaker, I move that the reading of the Journal of Friday, March 8th, 2019 be dispensed with and approved as corrected by the Chief Clerk.
Members, you have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Let's try that again. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. No. Oh my gosh. That's a close one, but the motion passes. Representative Cutter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It is an honor to serve with you.
You as well, Representative.
Madam Speaker.
It's all good. It's all good.
I just want to welcome Recycle Colorado has a group in the gallery. Are they up there yet? So I just want to welcome them here today. So take a chance to say hi if you can. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Herod.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members of the Finance Committee, we will be meeting today in LSBA at 1:30. We will hear 11:45 Tipper, Jaquez Lewis, 11:59 Jaquez Lewis and Gray, 11:99 Valdez, and we will be laying over 11:89 Gray and Valdez. So please take note, we'll be laying over 11:89. Thanks.
Representative Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Colleagues, I'm sure you're busy visiting with those of us that you have not seen for such a long time. Welcome back to the chamber. I just wanted you to know that we are having our Bible study tomorrow morning. And here's the news flash, everyone listening. God is nonpartisan.
Ain't that the truth? Representative Jackson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members of Energy and Environment Committee, I know you're going to be so happy, but guess what? Woohoo! We are not having committee today.
Representative Majority Leader Garnett.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to announce that the Executive Committee has been canceled for this afternoon. I know all of you are really looking forward to attending that, and that it will be rescheduled at a future time.
Any other announcements? Representative McKean.
Well, I'll make this quick. I get to go take my son Thursday morning to the airport to go to Europe for like 10 days, so I will not be here.
Representative McKean, was that an announcement or what was that? Are you asking to be excused? Would you like to ask?
Please.
Permission is granted. Representative Roberts.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Rural Affairs and Agriculture Committee, you are off the hook. We are not meeting this afternoon. Next meeting is on Thursday.
Representative Ransom and Valdez D.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And we
Members, do you guys have a tribute?
we have a,
Okay, please be quiet. We have a tribute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I ask the tribute be read at length.
The House of Representatives convened in the 72nd General Assembly hereby extends sincere commendations to the Apollo 11 moon landing 50th anniversary. On July 20th of 1969, at 8:17 p.m., UTC Neil Armstrong piloted the Eagle lander to the first ever landing of humans on the moon. Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin were the first two astronauts to step foot on the moon and cemented the United States' superiority in space. 50 years later, we celebrate the contributions of Colorado aerospace companies, researchers, and educators working to further the legacy of the Apollo and other exploration missions with the annual Aerospace Day at the Colorado State Capitol in the Colorado General Assembly. Aerospace is a vital industry in Colorado, and our state is a national leader in aerospace jobs, technology, and research. Through strong partnerships between large and small companies, as well as a vibrant community of university and national laboratory researchers and our military installations, Colorado leads the way in aerospace and space exploration. The Colorado State House of Representatives encourage efforts for the United States to once again travel to the moon, but this time to stay, and use the technological advancements and lessons learned to lead the way in taking us on to Mars. On request of Representatives Kim Ransom and Donald Valdez, given this 11th day of March 2019, State Capitol in Denver.
Representative Valdez.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, you can sit. Please sit. It is an honor to give this tribute here today to honor Aerospace Day here at the Capitol. If you have not had the chance to meet with individuals in the community and all over the state of Colorado. And with that, I also want to acknowledge former State Representative Joe Rice, who is here in the Capitol with that wonderful tie that he's wearing. Welcome.
Representative Ransom.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And the Aerospace Day at the Capitol is one of the funnest days we have. I hope you've all made time to go down to the first floor and look at the exhibits. The technology is just amazing. How many of you wanted to be an astronaut when you grew up? I think when I saw the Apollo landing back in the 60s, and I know I'm probably one of the few people here that was actually watching it live. I know so many of you were born after that happened. But when the Apollo landed, they didn't interrupt broadcasting on our old black and white TVs to show the landing. Instead, they had a special broadcast all day long. On those black and white televisions, they were playing old clips from movies back in the 30s where people would talk about wow, the moon, look at the moon. And because we had never been there before. And the space race back in the 50s and 60s showed the United States' ability to triumph in this world, on this earth, to get to the moon first. And it was such a big deal. I'm sure you've also all remember President Kennedy kind of getting started on this. And it was such a fun time, again, to watch this on TV. They were, singing By the Light of the Silvery Moon and all kinds of other songs that you think about when you think about the moon, and how fun it was to hear that first step, and, one giant step, and, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin. And we are so excited to have this tribute today to remember that. Those of you that were born after that, please sometime pull it up on YouTube and take a look at some of what was happening in the United States that day. Everybody was so proud of what we did as a nation to get to the moon and plant the United States flag there. So with that, I really do hope that you will make a point to go down to the day at the Capitol. And finally, the Air War College International Fellows, representing 25 countries, are up in the House Gallery. They are here to celebrate Aerospace Day with us. I think it's the guys up there. So if you can all help me welcome them. And thank you for being here. And thank you, Madam Speaker, for letting us do the tribute.
And if you
Thank
have
you
not,
for joining us today.
and if you have a chance, visit with our own astronaut here in the house over here in the back corner.
Yay. Representative Froelich.
And if anyone wants to find out what my maiden name is, they can watch the biography episode of Neil Armstrong. I urge you to do so. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Representative Liston.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, I too wanted to give due recognition. We do have the distinguished officers up here. They are officers from around the world here at the U.S. Air War College from Montgomery, Alabama. So let's stand and give these fine gentlemen a real warm welcome. These gentlemen are the future Air Force leaders from their respective countries. Off the top of my head, they're from China and Kenya and all over the world. I got the real pleasure to meet you all. Thank you, gentlemen. Go Air Force.
Representative Carver.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just wanted to remind you that at noon today, down in 112, we will be having the Veterans Caucus, and we'll be discussing veterans employment. And honored to have, again, former colleague Joe Rice talk about veterans employment with various companies here in Colorado. Again, noon, room 112.
Representative Gonzalez-Gutierrez and friends.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today we are commemorating 13 years of the Latino Advocacy Day, and so we have a tribute, and I move for it to be read at length.
The Senate and House of Representatives convened in the first regular session of the 72nd General Assembly hereby extend heartiest congratulations and commendations to Latino Advocacy Day. Latina Advocacy Day is celebrating 13 years of engaging Latinos from all over Colorado to speak out and help shape forward-thinking policies that make a difference in the lives of Latinos and Coloradans. Latinos are a key part of Colorado's constituency, calling our great state their home. Furthermore, Latinos are leaders in our families and in our communities, as well as in elected offices throughout the country. Engaging Latinos in the political process strengthens the fabric of our great state, ensures that voices and lived experiences of all Coloradans are respected and honored, and helps to reflect our values of fairness and equal opportunity. On request of Senators Rodriguez, President Garcia, Senator Gonzalez, Senator Moreno, and Representatives Serena Gonzalez-Gutierrez, Monica Duran, Adrian Benavidez, Bri Monteo, Yadira Caraveo, Rochelle Galindo, Sonia Jaquez Lewis, Carrie Tipper, Alex Valdez, and Donald Valdez, given this 11th day of March 2019, State Capitol in Denver.
Representative Galindo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, go ahead and sit down. So I can't express, the importance of Latino Advocacy Day. I remember myself coming down to the Capitol and participating, and it's such a wonder to now be on the other side, sitting as a representative for House District 50, a district with 47% Latinos, and seeing and actually participating in this caucus where there are actually 14 Latinos serving at the legislature at this time. So it's a pretty historic event. We have so many priorities. We have so many things to do to continue the engagement for Latinos, and I think this day is part of it. To see so many activists, to see so many people coming down to express their concerns and advocate for the policies that they think is important is what democracy is all about. So I know that we will actually be having a rally at 12:30 on the West Steps, so if you guys would like to join us, please do. It's going to be awesome and an amazing day, and thank you so much for your time.
Representative Benavidez.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And members, there is going to be a huge number of people that will be coming to talk to you this afternoon, maybe stop by your office. Please talk to them. This is a group of people who don't always come down here. They don't work in organizations that necessarily have the funds to hire lobbyists. But I can tell you, after attending the very first Latino Advocacy Day in 2006, as a speaker on a panel there, and seeing the interest that this community has in what we do here, and you would think it's only on social issues, but the buying power, the economic advantages in our community are huge. Every bill that we pass will touch on members of the Latino community. We're throughout the state. So please take the time to talk to them. It is so important. This may be people you never talked to. We heard from former Senator Jesse Ulabarri this morning. He went to the very first one as a 22-year-old with spiked blonde hair, he told us. So you never know who you're talking to, and they may be your colleague one of these days coming up very soon. So please take the time and welcome them. Thank you.
Thank you, members. Oh, Representative Duran.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. What a privilege and an honor it is to be here. I just wanted to say that our political power starts with us. We need to come together to advocate for our issues: immigration, reproductive freedoms, civic and environmental issues also. So just remember that we lift each other up together and make sure that our voices are heard. So thank you.
Thank you, members. Any other announcements and introductions? Seeing none, the next order of business is third reading, final passage of bills. Mr. Randall, please read the title to House Bill 1023.
House Bill 1023 by Representatives Sane and Jackson, House Senators Marble and Todd, concerning issuance of driving authorization documents to foster children who are under 18 years of age.
Majority Leader Garnett.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move for the passage of House Bill 1023 on third reading and final passage.
The question before us is the passage of House Bill 1023 on third reading and final passage. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Randall, please open the machine, and members, please vote. Please close the machine. With 64 aye votes and 1 excused, House Bill 1023 is passed. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Randall, please read the title of House Bill 1186.
House Bill 1186, Representatives McLaughlin and Axel, Senators Bridges and Cook, concerning fingerprinting options for background checks for school employees.
Majority Leader Garnett.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move for the passage of House Bill 1186 on third reading and final passage.
The question before us is the passage of House Bill 1186 on third reading and final passage. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Randall, please open the machine and members, please vote. Representative Soper. Your machine's not working? How do you vote? Representative Soper votes aye. Please close the machine. With 63 aye votes and 1 excused, House Bill 1186 is passed. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Randall, please read the title of House Bill 1065.
House Bill 1065, Representatives Soper and Roberts, Senator Rankin, concerning public hospital boards of trustees in connection with limiting the restriction the board may not include more than 4 local residents and allowing the board to unilaterally acquire real or personal property by lease with the board as designated public hospitals and enterprise.
Majority Leader Garnett.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move for the passage of House Bill 1065 on third reading and final passage.
The question before us is the passage of House Bill 1065 on third reading and final passage. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Randall, please open the machine and members, please vote. Representatives Buck, Humphrey, Sandridge, Soper. Representative Soper, how do you vote? Representative Soper votes yes. Please close the machine. With 64 aye votes and 1 excused, House Bill 1065 is passed. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Randall, please read the title of House Bill 1207.
House Bill 1207, Representative Roberts, House Senators Donovan and Rankin, concerning requiring that motor vehicles meet traction control standards for winter conditions.
Majority Leader Garnett.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move for the passage of House Bill 1207 on third reading and final passage.
The question before us is the passage of House Bill 1207 on third reading and final passage. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Randall, please open the machine and members, please vote. Geithner, McKean, Weissman, Williams, Wilson. Please close the machine. With 46 aye votes, 18 no votes, and 1 excused, House Bill 1207 is passed. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Randall, please read the title of House Bill 1086.
House Bill 1086, Representative Duran, Senator Pedersen, concerning the conduct of plumbing inspections to ensure compliance with the plumbing law.
Majority Leader Garnett.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move for the passage of House Bill 1086 on third reading and final passage.
The question before us is the passage of House Bill 1086 on third reading and final passage. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Randall, please open the machine and members, please vote. please close the machine. With 41 aye votes, 23 no votes, 1 excused, House Bill 1086 is passed. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Randall, please read the title of Senate Bill 103.
Senate Bill 103 by Senators Williams and Tate. Also Representatives Coleman and Carver concerning the ability of a minor to operate a business on a limited basis without obtaining the approval of a local government.
Majority Leader Garnett.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move for the passage of Senate Bill 103 on third reading and final passage.
The question before us is the passage of Senate Bill 103 on third reading and final passage. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Randall, please open the machine and members, please vote. Kip, Stoper, Kraftstarp. Okay, Representative Stoper, how do you vote? Representative Stoper votes yes. With 64 aye votes and 1 excused, Senate Bill 103 is passed. Co-sponsors. Representative Gray, it's for the children. Please close the machine. Mr. Randall, please read the title to House Bill 1026.
House Bill 1026, Representatives Catlin and McCluskey, all Senators Quorum and Donovan concerning fines assessed for violations of laws administered by the Division of Parks and Wildlife.
Majority Leader Garnett.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move for the passage of House Bill 1026 on third reading and final passage.
The question before us is the passage of House Bill 1026 on third reading and final passage. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Randall, please open the machine and members, please vote. Carver, Garnett, Geithner, Lontine. Representative Soper, how do you vote? Representative Soper votes yes. Mr. Randall, please close the machine. With 51 aye votes, 13 no votes, and 1 excused, House Bill 1026 is passed. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Randall, please read the title of House Bill 1210.
House Bill 1210 by Representatives Melton and Galindo, all Senators Danielson and Moreno concerning the repeal of prohibitions on the local government establishing minimum wage laws within its jurisdiction.
Majority Leader Garnett.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move for the passage of House Bill 1210 on third reading and final passage.
The question before us is the passage of House Bill 1210 on third reading and final passage. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Randall, please open the machine and members, please vote. Representative Lontine, please close the machine. With 40 aye votes, 24 no votes, and 1 excused, House Bill 1210 is passed. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Mr. Randall, please read the title of House Bill 1128.
House Bill 1128, Representatives Kraft, Tharp, and St. Senators Fields and Smallwood concerning intercepts in connection therewith intercepting lottery winnings to pay outstanding court obligations.
Majority Leader Garnett.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move for the passage of House Bill 1128 on third reading and final passage.
The question before us is the passage of House Bill 1128 on third reading and final passage. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Randall, please open the machine, and members, please vote. Representatives Buck and McKean, please close the machine. With 63 aye votes, 1 no vote, and 1 excused, House Bill 1128 is passed. Co-sponsors. Okay. Please close the machine. Majority Leader Garnett.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to lay over Senate Bill 6 one day till Tuesday, March 12th.
Seeing no objection, Senate Bill 6 will be laid over 1 day till Tuesday, March 12th.
Oh, what did I say?
Sorry.
March 12th. Let's not go back in time, please.
Mr. Randall, please read the title of Senate Bill 16.
Senate Bill 16 by Senators Donovan and Quorum, also Representatives Escar and Singh, concerning the methodology to distribute money in the severance tax operation fund after core developmental programs are funded without charging the transfer of the natural resources and energy grant programs.
Majority Leader Garnett.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move for the passage of Senate Bill 16 on third reading and final passage.
The question before us is the passage of Senate Bill 16 on third reading and final passage. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Randall, please open the machine, and members, please vote. Representative Liston. Representative Liston, how do you vote? Representative Liston, how do you vote? Oh, now it's working. Okay. Mr. Randall, please close the machine. With 63 aye votes, 1 no vote, and 1 excused, Senate Bill 16 is passed. Co-sponsors. Just now. Please close the machine. Mr. Randall, please read the title of Senate Bill 17.
Senate Bill 17 by Senators Zinzinger, House Representative Roberts, concerning the exemption of the Department of Transportation from existing or parking transportation commission approval requirements when it requires land needed for specified highway-related purposes by means other than condemnation.
Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move for the passage of Senate Bill 17 on third reading and final passage.
The question before us is the passage of Senate Bill 17 on third reading and final passage. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Randall, please open the machine, and members, please vote. Please close the machine. With 42 aye votes, 22 no votes, and 1 excused, Senate Bill 17 is passed. Co-sponsors. Please close the machine. Majority Leader Garnett.
Thank you, Madam Speakers and Madam Speaker. Members, I'm going to move a special orders calendar. It's only going to be 3 bills, but the list will be up here. So I move that the following bills be made special orders on Monday, March 11th at 10:45. House Bill 1197, House Bill 1118, and House Bill 1092.
Seeing no objection, the bills as listed by the Majority Leader will be made special orders calendar at 10:45. Representative Tatone. You have heard the motion. Seeing no objection, Representative Tatone will take the chair.
The committee will come to order. With unanimous consent, the bills will be read by title unless a request is made to read the bill at length. Committee amendments will not be read unless requested, as they are printed and in your bill folders. Floor amendments will be shown on the screen and on your iPads and not read unless requested. Bills will be laid over upon motion of the Majority Leader. And the coat rule is relaxed. Mr. Randall, please read the title of House Bill 1197.
House Bill 1197, Representatives Carver and Singer, all senators Lee and Gardner, concerning restrictions on making public the personal information of government employees whose official duties involve child abuse and neglect cases.
Representative Carver.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move the Judiciary Committee report to House Bill 1197.
All right, to the committee report. Representative Carver.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This was technical changes to different provisions of the bill, clarifying how we're protecting the personal data, including the addresses of caseworkers and other staff who are being threatened, and ask for a yes vote.
Is there any discussion on the judiciary report? Seeing none, the motion is the passage of the judiciary report. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All in favor no. All opposed no. All right, the ayes have it. To the bill. Representative Singer.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and it's a pleasure to serve with you.
It's a pleasure to serve with you.
Members, House Bill 1197 is coming to you in the month of March, which is Social Worker Appreciation Month as well. And while we are appreciating our social workers, I want to especially appreciate my co-prime sponsor, Representative Carver here. She brought this bill from the El Paso County Department of Human Services after threat after threat after threat came into caseworkers trying to do their job, protect kids. And this is the stories that we heard in committee. In the past few years alone, we have witnessed the fatal stabbing of a clinical social worker in Boston, the deadly beating of a social service aide in Kentucky, the sexual assault and murder of a social worker in West Virginia, the shooting of a clinical social worker and Navy commander at a mental health clinic in Baghdad, and the brutal slaying of social worker Terry Zenner in Kansas. These are only a few of the murders of our colleagues, which, along with numerous assaults and threats of violence, paint a troubling picture for the profession. These are the words of James Kelly, the former president of the National Association of Social Workers. This bill protects the folks that are supposed to protect our kids. And it's rare in this world when we so oftentimes heard of our caseworkers are called names such as baby snatchers when they're trying to do the right thing. When we hear about caseworkers who are trying to do the right thing and raise their own families but are getting called at 1 and 2 o'clock in the morning to stand up for kids that have no other line of defense. It's this bill that elevates that profession to those of district attorneys, to those of judges, to those folks that are our first responders. What this bill has done has not only protected our caseworkers from being doxxed, but also says to our caseworkers, you are a valued part of our system. I can tell you, as somebody who got those pages at 2 o'clock in the morning, I never thought about the threats that came to me because I thought about the kids first. But I'll tell you, I got way more death threats doing that job than I ever got doing this job. And so I want to thank Representative Carver for bringing me along on this bill and doing something to raise this profession to the level that it deserves. And then with that, I ask for an aye vote on House Bill 1197. And I move House Bill 1197.
Representative Carver.
Thank you, Madam Chair. When I first met with the caseworkers last summer, and they were talking about the number of threats they were getting, death threats, threats against their family, the level of threats that were generating reports to the police, and also because of threats against their family, you know, it was not just the daily fear that they experienced in doing their jobs, but fear for the safety of their families. And so when we were talking about the way forward, I said, well, what is your thought about who I should approach to carry this bill? And they immediately said, Representative Jonathan Singer, he's one of us. And so it's been an honor to carry this bill with Representative Singer. We think it's a very important bill. The caseworker testimony was really compelling, and we ask for your yes vote.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1190? Representative Valdez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I want to thank the bill sponsors for bringing House Bill 1197 forward. It protects the social workers in all areas, especially with the threats that, on the internet. And I want to thank you for that very much. Thank you.
Is there any more further discussion on House Bill 1197? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of House Bill 1197. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it. Mr. Randall, please read. Oh, the bill is passed. Mr. Randall, please read House Bill 1118.
House Bill 1118 by Representatives Jackson and Galindo, Senator Williams, concerning the time allowed for a tenant to cure a lease violation that is not a substantial violation.
Representative Jackson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move House Bill 1118 and the Transportation and Local Government Committee report.
To the committee report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There were a couple of amendments. One addressed both non-residential and employer-provided housing, keeping the eviction notice time frame at 3 days in both the case of commercial properties and in cases where an employer acts as a landlord and the employee is terminated with cause. The other is an amendment that we offered very much in good faith. While the bill sought to offer people an extra pay period, that is a total of 14 days, to cure a non-payment of rent, we offered up an amendment to shorten the eviction time frame to 10 days. That is the current 3 days, and then just adding another 7 days. These are calendar days, so an eviction could be filed on a Friday, and a tenant might have just another 5 days to help get rental assistance. So I ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further Representative McKean?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate it. And folks, this is an interesting issue, and we heard some discussion already on what we do about landlords and what we do about tenants. And some of that discussion, I think, really bears weight here, and it bears weight. In the discussions that I know were had in committee, and this is when I appreciate so much our second readings because we come back and we talk about that. What we really, I think, want to do is make sure that we come to some natural settling place between what's good for landlords, what's good for tenants. And I think actually the sponsors have done a good job toward that. I think, though, that there's a little bit further that we could come. So I would offer Amendment L021 to the House Transportation and Local Government Committee report and ask that it be properly displayed. I move it. So this would strike the Transportation and Local Government Committee report. What it really will do, guys, is it will allow exactly what the sponsors just said. This will actually allow the process to begin at 3 days as it has, but allow and in fact demand that tenants be allowed to cure that late rent bill up until the day of the hearing or 14 days, whichever is sooner. That's actually really important, guys, because what we're talking about here is we're talking about a landlord's desire to make sure this works out, to make sure that the parties on both sides say there's a need to cure this and to go ahead and make sure that everything is in order and going forward so that if it doesn't work out, everything's ready, but also give that maximum amount of time for people to come and cure their rent. I would ask for an aye vote.
Representative Jackson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Folks, this is amazingly familiar and actually looks like something that started out in the Senate last year. This would be a very complicated kind of judicial change. Bar Association, other attorneys involved with this discussion have issues with this particular way that this would go because, you know what, that eviction would still be filed. And those attorneys tell me that there are already issues with sealing those records. So the bill as it stands right now, it gives tenants just a very modest amount of additional time. Remember, 7 days. I'm going to say this to you so many times. 7 additional calendar days on the front end before an eviction, that's a forcible entry and detainer, is filed. So even if this filing doesn't result in an eviction, guess what? That record's going to stay there, and that eviction is still going to stay on that tenant's credit report. And I don't know about any of you, but try to find another place to live after you have an eviction on your record. It's probably going to cost you a little bit more. What we're trying to do here, folks, is help not just tenants, but also those landlords. Those landlords get their rent, and those tenants to stay in their homes so that people do not end up homeless. I ask for a no vote.
Representative McKean.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Folks, this is part of the conversation. How do we deal with this? And I think that it's important to have that fullness of discussion. And so in interest of that discussion, I would move Amendment L023 and ask that it be displayed. No. Amendment to that amendment. Not a substitute.
All right, the amendment L022 is properly displayed. Please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So folks, this goes back to this question of what happens when an eviction is filed, because it is an important conversation. It's actually not just an important conversation in terms of what we choose to do here and kind of where we play in the middle of a tenant and a landlord, but it makes so much sense when we've been talking about our courts and everything else. We want to take this pressure off the courts. So if the payment has been made according to this amendment, then the court shall dismiss the action. And by dismissing the action, then it should not be considered a part of a tenant's credit history.
Representative Jackson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And again, let me repeat. This relies on a process to actually undo something, a process that may not undo something. The notice that we are running right now, it's allowing more opportunity to actually prevent an eviction. And even if those court records are somehow expunged, I'm going to tell you again, that eviction still stays on somebody's credit report. And guess what? The tenant may not know until years later. So they say, hey, yeah, let's make this deal. They go ahead and pay their rent. They pay their rent, they pay their rent, they pay their rent, they pay their rent, they move. Years later, when they pull up that credit report, maybe they're trying to get their first car. Maybe they're trying to buy their first house because they too deserve some equity. And guess what? They can't get it because there's an eviction on their record. I ask for a no vote.
Representative Hooton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, we heard this bill for many hours, I can't remember, in committee. It was quite an eye-opener. I take this bill very seriously. My son received an eviction notice on a Friday, and with 3 days, that meant he would have had to have been out of his apartment by Monday with a new place to live. Fortunately, we were able to hire an attorney and stop the eviction process. They found something in his contract that they felt he was violating, and he only had 3 days. We were fortunate because we had resources to support him, to help him stay in his apartment. But most families who receive these eviction notices do not. And I will tell you, we were shocked and we were horrified. We felt it was a strategic tactic that they used to present an eviction notice on a Friday and give my son, who it was 19 at the time, until Monday to cure his lease. So I think 7 additional days is not even adequate, but I would accept that 7 additional days to cure an eviction notice. So I would urge all of you to seriously consider the impact that these kinds of evictions have on low-income families. Thank you.
Representative McKean to the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And to this amendment, you know, this is the challenge that we have, is what gets reported, how quickly it gets reported, and truly what the responsibility is to make sure that that eviction notice is cleared from someone's record. And when we put this in a bill and we say that it must be cleared, then that is what needs to happen. Now, you know, here's the challenge we all have, is what personal responsibility do we accept of going down and making sure that happens? That's a piece of this puzzle. But it's also a piece of this puzzle that we, to the underlying amendment, begin a process but allow, not if they want to, but demand that landlords allow that rent to be paid up to 14 days or the date of the hearing, whichever is soonest.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment 22? Representative Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning. L023 actually puts the emphasis back on the landlord, and I'm sure the landlords would be glad to let the court know as long as the rent is paid. And after speaking with my landlord, and I haven't been much of a renter except for the last 3 years, I can see how important it is that these dates are and how important it is to get your rent paid on time. I support L023 and actually the other amendment as well, because I think we're trying to make this a little more landlord friendly. When we do these things like we're fixing to do, it just makes your rent go up. Somebody has to pay for those extra fees. Somebody has to pay for that extra free rent. And the way I understand it from my landlord, and he gave me this landlord news here, is that when we add these days that this bill would allow, when we add the days, it's adding free rent because you have to evict this person. And so instead of having a month and a half of free rent, now it's 2 months. Who's going to pay for that? It will be the other renters. So this is one of those cases where we're creating a new problem. We're creating more of a problem, and we're going to make the cost higher. Everybody's complained about high rent cost in Denver. This is going to do it right here, because the way, according to my landlord, this is just going to give them a little bit more free rent before they evict, and someone has to pay for that. I support the 2 amendments. Thank you.
Representative Carver.
Thank you, Madam Chair. we heard such a range of testimony in committee, and one group we heard from was from the small landlords, primarily senior citizens who have bought residential property where they are paying off a mortgage. And I think this is the group that is particularly troubled by the time frames set out in the bill, how the time frames would be adjusted for the initial start of notice of eviction. But remember, we're talking various steps in the process. So the notice of eviction under current law can be initiated within 3 days of the non-payment of rent or for a non-rent minor violation, like excessive noise, vicious dog. There were a number of examples. But there is a couple of additional days to cure. And so what this amendment really goes to, because quite frankly, neither party, and this is especially true of the smaller landlords, the individual owners, as opposed to the big companies. An eviction process is enormously expensive for them. They don't want to evict. It is a huge loss for them. On the other hand, if they delay too long in taking that first step with the notice of eviction, which then triggers the later time periods for curing payment of the rent or curing the violation, whether it's excessive noise, it extends out the period for when, if they ultimately don't get paid, when the eviction process is complete. And many of these landlords talked about
Representative Carver, please to the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The reason why this is relevant to this amendment is this amendment makes clear that the ability to cure, in fact, is extended, right? It is an extended period of time to actually cure the violation, make the eviction go away, because this would require that the eviction action be dismissed. But it still protects the landlords, especially the small landlords, who otherwise are taking a month or two mortgage payment out of their own pocket if ultimately there is no payment made. So I ask for a yes vote on the amendment.
Representative Galindo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I rise in opposition to this amendment. This amendment does not fix the problem that we are trying to solve. We are trying to ensure that working families have additional time to make up any non-substantial violation on their lease that they may have committed. And so this amendment basically just still puts an eviction process on their record and will hurt them in the future for getting housing or even possibly a mortgage in their near future. So I urge a no vote on this amendment.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L023? Seeing none, the question is the passage of Amendment L23. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. No. The noes have it. The amendment fails. To Amendment 21.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we got a little off topic there, but we're back. And what we're back to, folks, is we're back to this idea that in the bill, in the committee report that we're talking about, we're at 10 days. We're at 10 days to cure. What we're talking about now is the ability to go ahead and start the process, but actually give more time to the tenant. Give them up to 14 days or the date of that hearing whichever one comes first. That's kind of a critical point here, guys, is that what we're talking about is giving more time. Because again, to satisfy what we want to do here, which is to try to help both parties, try to give a tenant more time to pay and give a landlord the surety that they are going to make sure that either they get paid or they begin the process. This satisfies both parties. It does not go all the way to one direction or all the way to the other. I would suggest a yes vote.
Is there any further discussion, Representative Jackson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And, you know, I'm going to tell you once again that this isn't really an opportunity for the tenant. Because you know what? Guess what? As soon as that eviction is filed, tenants are the ones who are typically responsible for paying the landlord's attorney's fees. So if you want to talk about being tied up in court, it's going to be the tenant who's going to be tied up in court paying those landlord's attorney's fees. Around 90% of landlords are represented by a lawyer in an eviction. That means 10% of tenants are not. So guess what? That eviction is going to be filed, and it's going to be filed, and it's going to be on their report. And since my kind colleague, Representative Lewis, mentioned the landlord that gave her some information, it's the same landlord who also offers up this information, which says, can I accept a partial payment? Sure. They actually say, sure. And then they say, now make another 3-day notice to pay or quit. I ask for a no vote.
Representative Buck.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I don't know, Representative Jackson, I was in the committee and I heard testimony over and over and over again about how landlords, the last thing they ever want to do is ever evict somebody. And they had plenty of stories of grace over grace over grace, because the last thing they want to do is evict somebody. So if you want to look at landlords as being the menace
Representative Buck, to the
having
amendment.
somebody having property to allow,
Representative Buck, please, to the amendment.
I am speaking to the amendment, and the amendment is of whether a landlord has 3 days to cure, because it goes to their credit report. But you know, it just seems like we don't care about the landlord giving a person a place to live. We just want to punish that landlord. And so I absolutely vote yes on this amendment. Remember who we heard in testimony. Remember of the grace that they were saying how they want to work with the tenant rather than ever evicting somebody. So please support this amendment.
Representative Jackson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I also remember one of those, I believe it was the faith-based organizations in committee who were testifying in support of this bill. All of us recognize that there are great landlords out there. And what that person said was, then let them continue with that grace in that grace period. Nothing in this bill will stop that. I ask for a no vote.
Representative Sane.
Chair, I want to ask the sponsor real quick, just there were some comments made about attorneys. I reread the amendment. I'm not seeing where it's forcing people to hire an attorney, but it seems to be giving more grace. Can you answer that question as far as more attorneys?
Representative Jackson.
Certainly, to my colleague as well, I am more interested in actually talking about the amendment, but since there are issues that have been brought up about the amendment that spoke to the issues of court and attorneys, and there was a letter shown about from the attorneys group who actually does what I'm told is like 70% of the evictions in the state of Colorado, I did feel as though it was appropriate to talk about attorneys and attorney fees.
Representative Sane.
Thank you. And we talked about codifying grace in statute, but this amendment would actually hit closer to home because it does allow those 14 days to make sure that a tenant, if they fall on hard times, are able to pay and make sure they stay in their home. Now, any business wants to make sure they have a couple things, and one is they want to make sure that they keep their client base. Most landlords will tell you that they want tenants to stay in the home. It's so much more expensive to re-rent out, to go find a new tenant, to repair, clean things. It is so much easier and better for everyone if the tenant stays in the home. So this would give the tenant the opportunity to do that. This would give them the grace to be able to do that. I think that's very important because if you aren't familiar with the rental procedure, if a landlord accepts partial payment, that could hurt them when it comes to any kind of eviction process currently, which is why a lot of them cannot accept a partial payment. They have to accept the whole payment right away. So I think it's really important to make sure that we extend the time for both the landlord and the tenant. I believe that's what this amendment is doing. I think that's extremely important for everybody. It gives more protection to everyone and allows that tenant to stay in their home, especially if they fall on hard times. So I would urge a yes vote on this amendment.
Question before us is the passage of Amendment L021. Any more discussion? Seeing none. The question is the passage of L021. All in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The amendment fails. To the committee report. Is there any further discussion, Representative McKean?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So folks, I mean, this is really where we come down and do all the hard work. So we have a challenge here, and we have a challenge that you'll get tired of hearing me try to describe to you, that what we're really looking for is that balance between the tenant's rights and the landlord's rights. You know, we have very disparate housing solutions in the state of Colorado. We have big apartment complexes, we have single-family homes, we have a lot of various kinds of housing stock. In fact, I was asking a question a little bit ago, just how many of these housing stocks we have. It's kind of impressive when you think about it. There are over 2,500 single-family homes on the rental market today. Does anybody in here know how many single-family homes are up for sale? 25,000. So think about what a small piece of the puzzle this is. 2,500 single-family homes. That's really important to remember because a ton of single-family homes are not owned by some large investment group. They're not owned by large groups or large condominium-type complexes. They're people. They're you. They're me. They're people who have a house that either they got relocated and they're renting out, or they've moved and upsized or downsized or whatever. We've got 3 on my street, people who downsized and decided to rent out their old house. We also have 2,000 apartments for rent in the Denver metro area right now. So think about what we're talking about, the balance in that market. So in that spirit, I would move Amendment L020 and ask it be properly displayed.
The amendment is properly displayed. Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So what this would do is it would actually carve out single-family homes and single condominium units. It's exactly that type of market that we want to talk about right now. It's exactly when we talk about attainable housing, when we talk about affordable housing, when we talk about our housing stock, it's exactly those people. Because guess what happens if they go through a period where they aren't getting paid their rent? Guess whose mortgage payment is still coming due? Guess who still has to pay the property taxes, pay the utilities, do all the other things that they have to do? And then at the end of that process, if they cannot afford to keep that going, what happens to that house? That house goes on the market and we lose part of the rental stock. So I would ask for your support on this amendment. This is one of those moments where we get to look at not just ideology, we get to not just look at what policy on this global scale looks like, we get to look at actually what affects people on the ground. This amendment is a strong amendment for the people of the state of Colorado, and especially for those people who have 1 unit, 2 units, and the people who need to rent those. I urge a strong yes vote for this amendment.
Representative Sandridge.
Thank you, Chair. I'm obviously in support of this amendment. This actually brings to light a conversation I had with 2 of my neighbors last evening. Came over. They fit under this category. They're called, I guess, mom and pop business people who just have 1 or 2 houses or condos that they rent out, and they need to be protected. They use these investments as investments for retirement, for income. And the conversation we had is if the mom and pop people get more stress on them, they're going to sell their properties. They're going to get out of the business of renting properties. And if that happens, there's less properties out there and rents go up, and the most vulnerable in our society that are looking for housing won't be able to attain more housing. So there's a negative effect of this. There's a big difference between, let's say, real estate investment trusts that are big businesses that have millions and millions of dollars that own these big properties. There's a big difference between them and the mom and pop people who are just trying to basically invest, live the American dream, and make a few extra bucks. So hopefully this amendment, I like this amendment because we separate them. We kind of protect the mom and pops, and that's what we need. That's what we need. A lot of these homeowners that own this real estate need to be protected, because if the investment's not good, they'll get out of this investment, and then we'll have less housing. Thank you.
So any further discussion on Amendment L20? See Representative Sane.
Thank you. This is a very important amendment because, as we had mentioned in committee, and as we had some landlords come together in committee, these are not big corporations. These are usually a family that owns 1 or 2 units, and they're single-family homes. This bill is going to put an undue burden on them. We actually had some very good testimony from one gentleman in particular. He said that if this bill passes, without the 3-day, without the law that protects both landlords and residents, I want to be able to treat these folks as humanely as possible, but I can't do that with this bill because now I've got to treat them as the worst case scenario. The worst case scenario is somebody who takes an eviction all the way to the very end. The average is 2 months. Sometimes it's 3 months. And 3 months is something a lot of individual landlords cannot afford to do. They will go into foreclosure. And on top of that, you do have some tenants, it's a very small percentage, but that will destroy the property on the way out. He said if there's a combination of those things, it's going to put me out of business and into foreclosure. With this bill, if it pushes it past...
Representative Sane, to the amendment.
I request the amendment be read at length.
Mr. Randall, please read the amendment L20.
Amendment L020, House Floor Amendment by Representative McKean. Amend Transportation Local Government Committee Report dated February 27, 2019, page 1, line 5. Strike agreement and substitute agreement, a residential agreement leasing a single-family home or a single condominium unit. Page 1, line 11. Strike the agreement and substitute agreement, a residential agreement leasing a single-family home or a single condominium unit. Page 2, line 3. Strike agreement and substitute agreement, a residential agreement leasing a single-family home or a single condominium unit.
Representative Sane.
Thank you. Now that we know what the amendment says and we're all clear what it says, I'll keep talking to the amendment. So what I was just saying, folks, is your landlords that have single-family homes, this is going to affect disproportionately. And there's more out there than you would believe. And if this forces those families to go out of business, those homes won't be available for people who really, really need them. And that's not going to be something that's being picked up by the private market necessarily. And government never does as good a job as an individual who is invested, not only in a property, but in a business. Members, I'd urge a yes vote on this very important amendment. Most landlords are good people. They have emailed me, they have reached out to me since that committee hearing, and they said, we want to give grace to people. We want that because we want them to stay in their homes. We want to give people second chances. It's also good business for us to give people second chances. They can't bear the burden of this bill like large corporations can that have many, many, many apartments. They just don't have the pool of resources necessary. This amendment will help those small families. And isn't that what we're about down here? Shouldn't we want to help the small business owner, the family business? This is the family business. This might be the #1 family business in this state. And this amendment would protect that. So I urge a yes vote.
Representative Buck to the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I, again, want to speak on the unintended consequences of what we do when we get our nose in between, say, the tenant and the landlord. Folks, pretty soon, you will see that they will want a first month's deposit, they'll want a back-end deposit, and they'll want a deposit for that first month as well. Again, they will not want that rent the first of the month, they'll want that rent on the 25th of the previous month. When you do these types of jacking with people that have just a notion of good business, you really do exactly the opposite of what you're trying to do, which is help. And it absolutely hurts the landlord, and it absolutely hurts the tenant. I ask for a yes on this amendment, please.
Representative Larson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Fellow members of the House, I was a single-family landlord when I was 24, when I lived in D.C., and I can tell you that oftentimes it is an informal relationship that these small sort of mom and pop, at the time I was just a single 24-year-old, but it's a very informal relationship that you have with these folks. I was living with my tenants in the home that I was renting to them. And I did not demand all that I asked of them was a single deposit. I didn't ask first month's, last month's rent, because I knew that if there was an issue where they couldn't pay their rent on time, I had that latitude to go to them, speak to them and say, hey, look, what's going on? Let's work this out. And that is the kind of informal relationship you get with these small single unit or maybe 2-unit folks. And I can tell you, if without this amendment, what is going to happen is these people who are looking to rent these homes are going to, just as my colleague alluded to, you're going to ask for first month's, last month, and deposit. That's thousands of dollars that people are not able to come up with. Had one of my tenants not been able to pay me for 14 months or 14 days, I can tell you I would have missed a mortgage payment. There are a lot of landlords, especially these small ones, where they are leveraged, perhaps over so, but you know, that's the reality of the world that we live in, where if you're unable to get that payment in a timely manner, you're going to lose that property. And then not only is the tenant going to be out of place, but the landlord is also going to be out of place. Then we're talking about foreclosures. We're talking about effects on the property market. This is going to have a cascading effect that is going to negatively impact not just renters, but also homeowners. There are a lot of issues with the underlying bill, but to impose this upon a single family rental where you have 1 or 2 units under your management, where you are going to potentially subject somebody's livelihood, somebody's retirement plan to this kind of financial uncertainty, like I said, you are going to see a tightening of the market. You are going to hurt those that do not have the financial ability to put down thousands of dollars in order to get into that home. This amendment is absolutely crucial to maintaining the viability of the mom and pop landlord, and it is also crucial to maintaining the ability of renters that maybe need, they can't work through a corporate system. Maybe they aren't able to put down the full deposit right away. And it's the mom and pop landlords that are willing to work with them, that's willing to look at them as an individual and say, hey, you know what? I understand your situation and I'm willing to take a risk on you because I have a relationship with you and I know who you are. If this bill goes through unamended, what's going to happen is we're going to lose those mom and pop landlords. It's all going to go to large corporate corporations that are going to run these leases through a program. It's going to be classic risk assessment, and they're going to reject the tenants that are not able to meet those minimum financial requirements, and you're going to put further stress on the people that this bill is designed to help. It seems to be a common theme that we're seeing when we see these bills that are designed to help tenants designed to help tenants at the expense of the landlord, is we are going to get to a system much like we have in California or Washington, where there's skyrocketing rents. It's totally unaffordable situation, all in the name of trying to help them, but ultimately you're just going to squeeze people out of the market and make rent unattainable and unaffordable. So with that, I strongly urge you to support this amendment along with the other amendments offered by Representative McKean. Thank you.
Representative Beckman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I stand in support of this amendment. I received an email from a property owner in my community that has a couple of single-family homes that they have been renting out for years. One of them was an actual family home. Being very concerned that freedom of contracts and property rights are being reduced to rubble this year in Colorado. And that not only this legislation, but she reminded me of several other pieces of legislation that are actually taking away private property rights, that are limiting the ability for renters to manage their property. A lot of times, single property homeowners that are renting maybe several homes in a community are working really hard to keep those properties up. This would allow them to have a little bit more flexibility and understanding that they aren't a corporation. They don't have a bunch of lawyers just waiting to deal with these specific issues. This email was very concerned about not only this bill, because they do have single-family rentals, but also the Residential Tenant Health Safety Act with the mold. She went on to say she was really thinking about having to sell these properties because she felt like once a renter was there, if they started to have significant issues with people destroying the property or not paying rent, that there would be no way that they could get them out of the property. Concerned with the reality that this bill not only talks about rent, but
Representative Beckman, to the amendment, please.
so this is to the amendment because this is someone who is renting out single-family homes, that they have had a couple of small homes in the community. This is very specific to them because they don't have they're not an apartment complex, so that it is to the amendment. And why I think it would help tremendously if we could just, for those mom and pop rental people that own this property, that we don't destroy their property rights because they are not going to be able to manage these properties with all the legislation that is being passed this year. And this would be a good step to say, we're not really trying to reduce your property rights to rubble in Colorado, that we understand that this may be your retirement or you may be trying to eke out a living by renting these properties. So I would ask for a yes vote with respect to my constituent who is very concerned with at least 4 bills that are really taking away private property rights and taking away the ability to rent their property and preserve their property.
Is there any further discussion on the representative list?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Members, I have to speak from a little bit of personal experience. A number of years ago, I was a landlord, not a big landlord. Myself and my mother had a single condominium unit, 2 different condominium units in a nice little condominium complex. In fact, it was in Representative Exum's district, right over on Airport Road, and owned it for several years. And I tried to work very well with my tenants off and on. There were, I can remember, several instances that people weren't able to come up with with their rent check, And so, you know, there were times, in fact, there was an elderly gentleman who lived there, and I could tell he was having some health issues, and I worked very closely with him. I would call him up, I'd go get the check, I would give him more leeway. I never fined him because, you know, he was trying to be a good tenant. But yet in the meantime, I still had to make my mortgage payments. I had to make the association payments. And there were, I think there was an instance or two where I was kind of strung out for a couple of months, if I remember correctly. So, you know, as an individual condominium owner renting it out, I worked very hard and diligently with them. And if that situation had gone on for 3 or 4 months, which sometimes it almost could have, you know, I would have been in the hole quite a bit. Plus, I had to pay my property taxes, which would come up yearly. And if there was maintenance due, I always tried to keep it up to date and clean and so forth. So I commend Representative McKean for bringing this amendment. I think it's needed to keep that housing stock available for people who can't afford all of the extra fees and so forth that they would have from a commercial landlord. In fact, I didn't make my tenants, after a while, you know, I really didn't hold their feet to the fire. I was very fair and reasonable. But to keep that housing stock up, and for small people who, I think it's been addressed before, there are a number of people who will end up owning 2 or 3 or maybe 4 units. That is their potential retirement. And if they get crossways or upside down, you know, that could have a very detrimental effect upon their own retirement. So I commend Representative McKean for bringing this amendment. I think it's fair, it's sound, it's good for all. I would urge an aye vote on L020. Thank you very much.
Representative McKean.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you all for your attention to this. I think it's one of the more substantive discussions that we've had this year about sort of the common sense reality and truly what we can do to help not either exacerbate an issue or put too much of the onus on one party. I think this makes total sense. You know, as I was talking actually to Representative Liston for a minute before he came up, it occurred to me that a lot of people who've never had a rental don't understand some of the basics of owning just a few rentals. And that is that it's true, your mortgage payment goes on. All these expenses go on. And so when you budget out the year of what that rental looks like, you may have a 2, a 3, a 4 month hole in that income from that rental, which makes it more difficult to own it, which makes it more acceptable to think, yeah, maybe we just put it on the market. And then the rental stocks go down. And I think that that's one of those terrible cautions that we need to have when we talk about how we pass bills, the way we consider amendments like this one. Folks, I urge a strong yes vote on this. Stand up for some of our small businesses. Stand up for some of our folks who just have 1 or 2 units out there that really deserve to make sure that they're helped.
Is there any division has been called? The question is the adoption of The question is the adoption of Amendment L20 to the judicial report on House Bill 1118. A division has been requested. All those in the chamber not entitled to vote, please be seated. All those in favor of Amendment L2020, please stand or remain standing in one place until the count is taken. Okay, you may be seated. All those opposed to Amendment L020, please stand and remain standing in one place until the count is taken. You may be seated. Amendment L020 fails. To the judicial report. Is there any further discussion on the judicial report? Seeing none. What? To the transportation and local government report, is there any discussion? Seeing none. The question is the passage. Oh, Representative Zane.
Hold on just a second. Okay.
Representative Zane.
Thank you. I move L027 and ask that it be properly displayed.
L027 is properly displayed. Please proceed.
Thank you. Now, this particular amendment, what it does is it substitutes in making sure about agreements for residential lease agreements in rural counties. And this is enormously important because we heard statements in committee that landlords can simply charge first month's rent, last month's rent, plus security deposit. But I don't know, I've talked to a lot of folks who rent homes and they don't necessarily have $5,000 in their pocket. That's kind of like saying, let them eat cake. This particular amendment would exclude the areas that are most hit by folks in poverty, by people who have needs that landlords are trying to make sure they are giving them a second chance. But in rural areas, this is even more important because they don't tend to have the same economies as cities. They don't have that same cushion some of our city cousins have. So we need to make sure that we protect rural Colorado. I ask for a yes vote.
Representative Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I rise in support of the amendment. Rural Colorado appreciates Representative Sain's amendment. We don't need to put any more burdens or problems on rentals in rural areas. It was interesting when we talked about the wage bill the other day, where we talked about the different parts of the rural areas, and Lamar was mentioned, Pueblo, several of those places where you rent. And the prices weren't exactly like I thought they should be, but for people that do rent out in rural areas, This amendment would really help. I suggest everyone in the House vote yes.
Representative Pelton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In my county, and in my district, there are farmers that employ people. Sometimes housing is a part of their employment. If you fire them or they quit, sometimes you still have a hard time getting them out of your house, your property. And so I think this amendment here would be a great one for rural Colorado.
Representative Jackson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Representative Pelton, we did offer up an amendment in committee that removed employer housing. So if somebody actually gets fired with cause, then the current 3-day notice would still exist. And I got to tell you, folks, I love rural Colorado. I'm from this state. I love every single corner of this state. And landlords in the more rural parts of our state are not any different than landlords in the metro area. I mean, sure, it sounds really scary, but guess what? Just like those rural communities, a lot of those properties are not owned by those landlords. Single-family rentals are a $15 billion bond market and growing. And for the tenant, these properties are their homes. For the landlord, who are lucky enough to be landlords, and yeah, there's a lot of great ones out there, they're an investment. I ask for a no vote.
Representative Catlin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's an honor to serve with you.
It's an honor to serve with you.
Thank you. I don't come down here very often, but when I do, it's usually about rural Colorado. I'm just kind of a country boy myself. When I got to Denver and I went to find me an apartment, and the landlord said, well, that'll be first, last, and security deposit, just about choked my horse, because that was an awful lot of money. And I'm coming down here today to talk to you about rural Colorado. Out there are a lot more handshake agreements than there are written agreements. There was mentioned about if an employee were fired, that he'd have, with cause and all of that. That's in an employment contract. That's really not a rental contract between me and the people that work for us. So let's not get these confused. What I'm saying is, I like the idea that rural Colorado is different. I've come down here a number of times this session and talked to you about the consequences in rural Colorado when we start to try to cap local folk with Denver ways. I like the idea that we might be able to do something that would say in rural Colorado, we get it, we'll understand that. I appreciate this I appreciate this amendment for a couple of reasons. First off, one of the things that's happening to us in rural Colorado is our number one export is our kids. But those that we don't export are trying to build a life. They're trying to start some equity. They're starting to figure out what it's like to be an employee. I would like to see us make it easier out in rural Colorado to rent a house if you're a renter. I'm not talking about the landlords. But I think we ought to take a look at, out in those areas where we don't spend as much money, because we don't have as much money, some of these kind of things, the unintended consequences, could be pretty dire. And I would ask for a yes on this amendment.
Representative Buck.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I am so frustrated because when someone says an investor is a bad person, that they shouldn't be making any money. I have to tell you, if anybody wants to put money in a house so they can rent it out, that is a goodness of their heart. An investor is not a nasty person. Folks, don't look a gift horse in the mouth. If you have some spare money and you want to try to make just a little margin on something that you can put your monies towards, it's not a nasty thing. It could be their retirement. It could be their nest egg. Please do not look as an investor as a nasty person. I ask a yes on this amendment. Thank you.
Representative McKean.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, as I'm listening to some of these arguments, I realize that we're putting ourselves, as I keep repeating, but we're putting ourselves kind of in between two interest groups. And I wonder why. When we talk about what we're trying to accomplish here, and Representative Buck, you know, was talking about, you know, don't look askance on one person for their motive or another. What we're talking about is the ability for people to find the housing they need. This amendment deals with rural counties. And we talk a lot up here about the divide in this state between rural and urban. But when we talk about culturally the difference between urban and suburban Colorado and rural Colorado, I think you might want to take a deep breath. Because I grew up on a family farm. I grew up on a family farm where we did a lot of things. We raised cattle and pigs and sheep and soybeans and corn, but we were common back in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s. We are not common anymore. There are not a lot of family farms. There are not a lot of section and a half farmers. There are a lot of people out there who have to rent a house, sometimes on the very farm that was their family farm, so that they can work for somebody who had the money when they hit hard times. So I implore you to begin really taking account of this divide. And this amendment speaks to it. This amendment speaks to why are we putting these kind of strictures on those communities where, one, rental properties are not as common as they are along the Front Range, and two, where people's crises are not quite the same, where, you know what, we have a process in place and usually they can work that out. You know what's funny is half the time I know the renters in northern Missouri, they don't work it out with money. They work it out with making sure that they put in longer hours, picking corn, combining beans, moving cattle, branding. So when you talk about this kind of an amendment, folks, this is the kind of amendment to support. Jump on board.
Representative Buck.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And again, I look at it's punishing the people that want to work with the landlords. And we heard it in committee, or want to work with the tenants. We heard it in committee over and over, how hard they work with their tenants to help them. And I just look at this whole issue, and I'm supporting the amendment. But again, don't punish the good people. And man is not inherently a bad person. There are a lot of wonderful, wonderful landlords, and especially in the rural area. I mean, that is the salt of the earth. They will bend over backwards for their tenants. Please support this amendment and do not punish the people that absolutely have the beautiful grace in their lives to help people and want to help people. Please do not punish them. Please support this amendment. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question is the passage. Representative Zane.
An honor to serve with you.
It's an honor to serve with you, too.
Members, I again would urge a yes vote on this amendment. Rural Colorado is different than urban Colorado. Even rural Colorado is different from certain areas of rural Colorado. But let me tell you something. The good people in rural Weld County don't need your Denver ways. They don't need your Denver solutions. They can fix their own problems and come to their own agreements. They don't need this. And they don't need more laws restricting the ways that they can help people figure out a way to stay in their home, because that's what this is about. this law passes unamended, more people will be evicted. We were given that warning. More people won't even be given the chance to rent a home because there will be more bars in place to protect against the worst case scenario. And most people are not the worst case scenario. Most landlords are not the worst case scenario. There's always going to be a bad landlord, just as there's going to be a bad tenant every once in a while, but the majority are not. And we're basically punishing everybody else for the actions of a few. We're punishing rural Colorado. Ask for a yes vote.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, there's Representative Liston.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Members, you know, we're having a good discussion here. I like to read the Wall Street Journal, and there was a great article out of this weekend's, I think it was either Friday or Saturday's, says it pays to be a Wyoming cowboy. I don't know if any of y'all saw this. I got it right here. It's a really good article. I encourage everybody to read it. But they talk about the cowboy way. And the cowboy way and the cowboy code and the cowboy, you know, your handshake is your bond is a handshake. That's been said by Representative Catlin and so forth. And you know, when in these rural communities, when they're trying to get and entice workers to come in and work, and sometimes housing can be a big hurdle for them. And so that farmer or that person who happens to own a small little piece of a home or whatever, because they really don't have condos in downtown Lamar and so forth. You know, they're trying to entice these workers, say, come work for me. You know, I'll make things work out for you. We have a handshake here, and if you're a little bit late on your rent or whatever, I'll still work with you. I'm not going to ask you to put down a first month's rent and last month's rent and a damage deposit, because I need you to come out here, bring your family, bring your kids, and come out here and settle, and I'll work with you, and so you'll come out and help me. If you'll help me, I'll help you. And that's the cowboy way of coming out, and you know, if you meet me halfway, in fact, I'll meet you more than halfway. So that's all that this amendment is trying to do, is if you'll meet me halfway, I'll meet you halfway when it comes to rent and damage deposits and so forth, because we need you as much as you need us. So I think this is a well-crafted and fair amendment. I urge an aye vote on this amendment. And take a look at this article, The Cowboy Way.
Representative Buck.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I do think that I get what the bill's sponsors are all about. I get constituents or whatever. I think that's why we all serve down here. But I ask the bill sponsors to please have grace for the rural area and allow them to do their way, just like Representative Liston said, the cowboy way. So please support this amendment, have some grace, and support this amendment. I appreciate it.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question is the passage of Amendment 27. All in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. No. The amendment fails. Is there any further discussion on the Transportation and Local Government Report? Representative Humphrey.
Thank you. I have a quick amendment here, members. I'll just move L024 and ask that it be properly displayed. Oh, yeah. Sorry, I shouldn't.
The Amendment 24 is properly displayed. Please proceed.
Thank you. So what this one says basically is that, as amended, there's a 10-day cure period in this bill, and this says that a local government essentially can do less than that, not less than 3 days, which was the previous law, but a local government can go ahead and make the decision that's best for themselves. So this is a good local control amendment, and I would appreciate your yes vote.
Representative Singh.
I think you also support this amendment as well. And we talk about we want local control. Well, that's what this amendment is. It's about local control. I just want to bring up a comment one of the sponsors made in the committee again. That is, well, landlords can just collect first, last, and security deposit. Most people don't have that amount of money. Let me remind you what rents are. On average, in some areas, it's $1,800 for a one bedroom. So for a family, that can be $2,000, $2,500. Who has $5,000 to $6,000 in their pocket if they need to rent a home? Not many people. Maybe those oil and gas workers, because there's actually good paying jobs. But I support this amendment. This is about local control. If a local government says, look, we want to keep things as they are to protect our constituents who are renters and protect our constituents who are landlords, I think we should allow them to do that.
Representative Galindo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I urge a no vote on the amendment.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing Representative Humphrey.
Thank you. And members, just once again, this bill poses a real specter of putting landlords out of business, which is in turn going to raise prices, create further hardship. We don't want to see a recession in this state, and we seem to be doing things that are pushing us in the wrong direction. This is a simple local control amendment. I think this is the right way to go. If that's what we're about here, let's go ahead and actually give people in our local governments the ability to decide for themselves what fits. Let's not do a one-size-fits-all sort of a thing here. Thank you.
Representative Singh.
Thank you, and no answers from the sponsors on local control. It seemed really important on Friday.
Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, the question is the passage of Amendment 24. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. No. The amendment fails. Is there any further discussion on the Transportation and Government Report? Seeing none, the question is the passage of the Transportation and Local Government Report. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The report passes. To the bill. Representative Jackson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, I have worked on housing legislation since I came into this chamber and have done lots and lots of research on what drives our particular market. So I'm going to try to help you understand step by step where we are as it relates to housing instability. So the Payton Foundation points to the Great Recession of 2008 as fueling the perfect storm. First, we had bankruptcies, labor shortages, a lack of land development, and risk aversion. So nobody was doing anything to build affordable housing. But there were those who had some cash and were able to invest in the high return market, and that is relatively pricey single-family housing and rental units. Those folks who lost their homes to foreclosure, I think you remember those people, had to find apartments. And then, as we all know, our economy started to shift, and lots of people started moving to our incredible state. That's when more investors started buying up those single-family homes and renting them out. With issues like, the bad word here, construction defects looming, apartments stopped being built, and according to data provided by the Colorado Department of Local Affairs, people started renting down. That is, occupying rentals that were more affordable than their income, which in turn forced lower income renters to rent up and to spend more. In the Denver, Aurora, I'm from Aurora, Lakewood metro area, the National Low Income Housing Coalition says there is a deficit of 86,640 affordable units for low-income families. Princeton University did a study on Colorado evictions. They found that 1 in 4 families in our state were spending over 70% of their income on rent. Of course, having that eviction on someone's record makes it just that much harder to find another place. If they have an eviction, the new landlord can charge them more. The spiral down continues. In 2016, roughly half of the court filings by landlords for non-payment of rent resulted in evictions. Half of them. I've said this before. There is a lot of money to be made off of evictions. I've said this before. There are law firms that specialize in evictions. And guess what? I've said this before. Most of the single-family homes in our state aren't owned by those moms and pops that we all do very much care about, but are instead owned by real estate investment trusts and LLCs, and a lot of them by people who don't even live in our state. According to the most judicial branch annual statistical report, because yes, I'm citing research here, in Arapahoe County, there were just over 10,000 eviction filings last year. And I'm talking about filings. I am not talking about individuals. For every filing, there may be partners and roommates who also face the repercussions of having an eviction on their record. And let's not forget all of those kids who suffer from being forced to move. A recent poll shows 60% of voters statewide agree that there is a housing crisis in their community, including 40% who strongly agree, 43% of millennials, and 36% of rural voters strongly agree. Stable housing has an impact on the health of an entire family. We're not just talking about the roof over somebody's head. We are talking about the cornerstone of self-sufficiency. If you don't have a house, you don't have much else in your life. According to the Colorado Department of Education, more facts here, almost 2,000 K-12 students are experiencing homelessness. That's in my own Arapahoe County alone. We all know that Colorado has an expensive housing market for both homeowners and renters, with record profit for developers. Since 2014, the median rent for a one-bedroom apartment in our state rose 22.4%, twice the nationwide increase. Working families should be able to afford housing and still have enough money to pay for the basics like food and clothing and health care. Housing needs to be available and affordable to every single person in our state. I gotta say this, and I'm gonna say this loudly, and I have said this in every stakeholder meeting. I have said this so many times. Absolutely nobody is trying to harm landlords, but we are trying to balance the scales of justice and reduce evictions. House Bill 1118 would give people time to come up with the cash to stay in their homes, which helps both the tenant and the landlord. I urge an aye vote.
Is there any further, Representative Say?
All right, thank you, Chair. And I have some pretty unassailable numbers here because we heard in committee the problem we're trying to solve is our eviction is growing. And we had one gentleman say, well, we need to be just like California and do this. Well, if you look at California, it's closer to 3.3%. Now, if you look at the State of Colorado Judicial Branch Annual Statistical Report, and this is the most recent report in 2018, eviction's been going down a long time in Colorado. In fact, we're a little over 0.6%, not 6%, 0.6% statewide. What are we trying to solve here with this bill? And in the areas where it's higher, by the way, guess what you find? In more concentrated areas with more apartments and condominiums, you find more frivolous lawsuits. If we really want to solve the problem, then let's go after construction defects. We solved a very small portion of that 2 years ago. We didn't go all the way on it. That price is built into homes. That would have been a better solution. When government says, here's a problem, the government solution is often worse than the problem. We may as well call this bill annexing into California, because that's what we're doing. You look at the eviction rates in California and what's going on there, it is truly so unaffordable, they're moving to Colorado. I guess we may as well annex it. I urge you to no vote.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of House Bill 1118. All those in favor say aye. Oh. Aye. All those opposed, no. The bill passes. Mr. Randall, please read House Bill 1092.
House Bill 1092, Representative Valdez A., also Senator Janal, concerning a prohibition on future ownership of an animal for persons convicted of animal cruelty.
Representative Valdez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move House Bill 1092 and the Judiciary Committee report.
To the Judiciary report.
Yeah, members, so we did a strike below in committee that effectively addressed all of the concerns about the agricultural committee or community in this bill. So we redefined animal as pet animal, but what this really will do is this will help those convicted of animal cruelty to receive the mental health treatment that they need and hopefully prevent further acts of violence in the future, and also will allow the court at their discretion to essentially let that person not be in possession of an animal for the 2 to 5 years after an aggravated felony conviction. So this is good for animals and this is good for people, and I would urge an aye vote.
Representative Weissman.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I just wanted to speak briefly to the interesting course that this bill has had. We heard it pretty early in judiciary. There were concerns that members of both parties had with the introduced version. We laid it over so that the sponsor could continue to do work with various stakeholders, and he has done a great deal of that. The way in which the bill now comes to us is via a strike below amendment, which was approved unanimously in committee. So I think the sponsor has done the work that needed to be done to address the concerns with the introduced bill. I think what we have before us is a pretty well crafted balance, and I think it's deserving of support onward in the process. So I just want to commend the sponsor.
Is there any further discussion on the judiciary report? Seeing none, the question, yes, Representative Valdez.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to move Amendment L007, have it displayed. It just changes one word. There was a bit of a change that needed to be made, so I will.
Okay, Amendment L007 is properly displayed. Please proceed.
Yeah, this is a very simple amendment. It just changed one word from defendants to juveniles to be in symbiotic with the rest of the language.
Is there any further?
And I ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L007? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of Amendment L007. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The amendment passes. To any further discussion on the judiciary report? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of the judiciary report. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. No. The judicial report passes. To the bill, Representative Valdez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There was a strike below, so the judiciary report is the bill, and I ask for an aye vote on the bill. Thank you.
Any further discussion on House Bill 1092? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of House Bill 1092. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The bill passes. Assistant Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move the committee rise and report.
Seeing no objection, the committee will rise and report.
that matter? The House will come back to order. Mr. Randall, please read the report of the Committee of the Whole.
Madam Speaker, your committee will hold the report of Secretaries following attached bills being seconded and the following recommendations thereon. House Bill 1092 is amended. House Bill 1118 is amended. House Bill 1197 is amended. Passing your goes to count for third reading final passage.
There are amendments at the desk. Mr. Randall, oh, I'm sorry. Who was in the chair? Representative Tatone. You have heard the motion. There are amendments at the desk. Mr. Randall, please read the McKean amendment to the report of the Committee of the Whole.
Representative McKean moved to amend the report of the Committee of the Whole to reverse the action taken by the committee in not adopting the following McKean Amendment L020 to House Bill 1118 shows has been passed. House Bill 1118 as amended passed.
Representative McKean.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Folks, you know, often when these are important enough conversations, we decide that we would challenge the action of the Committee of the Whole, and this is a big one. So this goes back to making sure that we cut out residential units that are single-family homes or single condominium units, and I urge an aye vote on this cow.
Is there any further discussion? Representative Galindo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We debated this during second reading. I urge a no vote.
The question before us is the McKean Amendment to House Bill 1118. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Randall, please open the machine and members, please vote. Snyder and Singer. Representative Singer. Singer is excused. Please close the machine. With 31 aye votes, 33 no votes, and 1 excused, the McKean Amendment fails. Mr. Randall, please read the second McKean Amendment to the report of the Committee of the Whole.
Representative McKean moved to amend the report of the Committee of the Whole to reverse the action taken by the committee in not adopting the following McKean Amendment L021 to House Bill 1118 to show has been passed. House Bill 1118 has been passed.
Representative McKean.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And again, guys, this is finding that middle ground between tenants and landlords. This lets the process begin, but gives the tenant time to cure up until 14 days or the time of the hearing. This is a good amendment. Vote yes.
Representative Jackson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And again, members, as we debated this, this still leaves an eviction on somebody's record, but makes it much harder for them to find housing again. I urge a no vote.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the second McKean Amendment to the report of the Committee of the Whole. Mr. Randall, please open the machine and members, please vote. With 30 aye votes, please close the machine. With 30 aye votes, 34 no votes, and 1 excused, the second McKean Amendment fails. Mr. Randall, please read the same amendment to the report of the Committee of the Whole.
Representative Sane moved to amend the report of the Committee of the Whole to reverse the action taken by the committee in not adopting the following Sane Amendment L027 to House Bill 1118 shows has been passed. House Bill 1118 has been passed.
Representative Sane.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move the same amendment to the Committee of the Whole.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, rural Colorado is different than urban Colorado. Rural Colorado has different needs. They don't need Denver solutions. They don't need a size one fits all. I urge a yes vote.
Representative Galindo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I also represent rural Colorado, and just to reiterate, first month's rent, last month's rent, damage deposit can still be collected as well as late fees, and landlords also typically collect an amount of rent sufficient enough to cover their operating expenses. Finally, it's also worth noting that smaller, less professional landlords are often housing providers for the lowest income Coloradans. These tenants are frequently in a position where they would benefit the most from additional time before an eviction. I urge a no vote.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the same amendment to the report of the Committee of the Whole. Mr. Randall, please open the machine, and members, please vote. Please close the machine. With 26 aye votes, 38 no votes, and 1 excused, the sane amendment is lost. Mr. Randall, please read the Humphrey amendment to the report of the Committee of the Whole.
Representative Humphrey moved to amend the report of the Committee of the Whole to reverse the action taken by the committee in not adopting the following Humphrey Amendment L024 to House Bill 11T shows doesn't pass. House Bill 11T as amended passed.
Representative Humphrey.
Shocking. Madam Speaker, thank you. I move the Humphrey Amendment to the Committee of the Whole report.
Please proceed.
Seems like we just did this. So what Denver and Boulder want, others frequently don't want. So let's agree on a simple local control amendment. Local control has been a mantra in this chamber. So let's go ahead and honor that and respect that and not do a one-size-fits-all solution here with this bill. So I urge a yes vote. Thank you.
Representative Humphrey, you mean not everyone in Boulder is representative of what's in the rest of Colorado? I'm so offended. Representative Galindo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Representatives from neither Denver nor Boulder are on this bill. I'm from Greeley, and my Rep. Jackson is from Aurora. So I definitely urge a no vote on this amendment.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the Humphrey Amendment to the report of the Committee of the Whole. Mr. Randall, please open the machine, and members, please vote. Please close the machine. With 25 aye votes, 39 no votes, and 1 excused, the Humphrey Amendment is lost. There are no further amendments at the desk. Mr. Randall, the motion before us is the report of the Committee of the Whole. Mr. Randall, please open the machine, and members, please vote. Representative Humphrey. With 41 aye votes, please close the machine. With 40 aye votes, 24 no votes, and 1 excused, the report of the Committee of the Whole is passed. Majority Leader Garnett.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to lay over the balance of the calendar till Tuesday, March 12th.
Seeing no objection, the balance of the calendar will be laid over till Tuesday, March 12th. Announcements and introductions. Representative Liston.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, well, we've had some good lively debates here over the last couple of days, and I really didn't want to take your time this morning because we had a lot of people in the crowd, but you know, the good news just keeps coming. What can I say? I keep looking for bad news, but you know, we have such a great economy out there. These latest statistics are from the Department of Labor, Bureau of Labor Statistics. They're fresh right off the bat, And I see Representative Melton is coming down here. It's driving him crazy. But these are actual facts. The employment for the U.S. economy grew by 255,000 jobs. The unemployment rate is now 3.8%, the lowest. It went down 0.2%. The labor force participation rate, which tells how many people, adults, are in the workforce, grew to 63.2%. It's the best it's been in years. And the average hourly earnings, what people make out there, rose again in February by 3.4%. This is the strongest rate in the growth since the year 2000. And you know, we've had some interesting debates about the minimum wage. Well, I want to give you an idea of how capitalism really works and the free market. Friday, Costco, that good company that employs almost 340,000 people, Costco announced voluntarily that they're going to raise their minimum wage for the second time now to $15 an hour. So capitalism works. Let's hear a shout out for the U.S. economy and capitalism. Go capitalism. Thank you. Thank you, members.
Thanks, Obama. Representative Melton.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thanks, Obama. Once again, I guess, and I don't mean to be doom and gloom, but I read a different jobs report on Friday, one that said the economy only created 20,000 jobs. And so if we're really talking about such a robust economy, I would have expected much closer to the projections of 200,000 jobs, not just 10% of that. But, you know, maybe the president's new budget, where he's cutting domestic spending, and every analyst says that that will slow down this economy and end up pushing us into a recession, maybe that won't be true.
Representative Van Winkle.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Well, Representative, I'm curious how you can at the same time thank our former President Barack Obama for the strong economy and then say how the economy is not actually strong.
Oh my gosh, Representative Melton is back.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think I can praise the previous administration because he inherited an economy that was in the tanks, turned it around, and now this administration has been riding the wave, but unfortunately doesn't know how to steer the ship into the harbor.
Any more comments on the economy? Representative Sane, no?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just want to take a moment to thank somebody we all agree on. Thank you, taxpayers. And thank you, Tabor.
Oh. Representative Landgraf.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I can attest to this. The car manufacturer, repair people are doing a booming business thanks to the Landgrafs. But also, if you really want to hear about jobs, go downstairs, Veterans Caucus, employment right now, and we do have lunches, good ones.
Representative Lontine.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm going to change the subject to the Health and Insurance Committee. We had cleared the calendar for tomorrow, but then now we've added a bill back. So we do have a hearing tomorrow upon adjournment for Senate Bill 41, and I thought I'd be a day early, give you guys a heads up. Thanks.
Representative Ransom.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I know we already made the announcement about Aerospace Day at the Capitol, and that is still going on for those of you that want to go down. But I wanted to make sure everybody knew that since we adjourned on time, or we will be adjourning on time, they're having a big group photo, and they would like, I was just asked to invite all the legislators to go down about 5 to 1. They're going to gather us on the steps on the grand staircase. Both the governor and the lieutenant governor will join us, and they just want to have a big big group photo to honor all these fun aerospace folks that are here today. And again, remember when you were a little kid and wanted to be an astronaut? This is your chance. Thank you.
Representative Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Since the economy is rolling along and capitalism is doing so well, I've checked with the majority leader and also the minority leader and cleared it with both of them to leave a little early on Friday, March 29th for my niece's wedding.
Aw. Permission granted. Representative Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I, too, am asking for permission to be gone tomorrow to do tests out at the hospital.
Thank you, Representative. Permission granted. Representative Kraftart. Are you? Oh, anyone else? Seeing none. Oh, Representative Assistant Majority Leader Kennedy.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move the House stand in recess until later today.
Seeing no objection, the House will be in recess till later today.